Another question you might ask for Locke is the following. You can imagine, you might also have come across people who seem to remember experiences that they could not have possibly had. So imagine there's a rather nutty history professor who specializes in the early part of the 19th century, things that happened in Europe at that time, and he might have spent so much time studying, for example, Napoleon, that he seems to remember, he tells you he remembers, doing the things that Napoleon did. He says, I remember the Battle of Austerlitz and crossing the Alps on that beautiful steed. I remember my exile onto the Isle of Elba and being saved from drowning by a Newfoundland dog and so on. Now, you want to say, those aren't genuine memories. You can't really remember something that didn't happen to you. You can only seem to remember. Those are apparent memories. And Locke surely would want to say that. That is, there's a difference between seeming to remember something, even if you're vividly certain that that's something that happened to you, that would still be an illusion. Likewise, there might have been things that I did as a child that my brothers and parents have repeated enough times that I developed the illusion over time of thinking that I remember doing those things, even if I'm in fact not remembering those experiences that happened to me. In my case, it would be the same self, but not because I can form direct memory links to that earlier self, but rather because I can form, hopefully, indirect memory links to that person stage. But for the rather nutty history professor who literally thinks he's Napoleon, doesn't just identify with him, but thinks he is Napoleon, Locke would have to say something like this. Those are just quasi-memories, not genuine memories. If they were genuine, it would have to have been you that did those things. These are just quasi-memories. But then if we ask Locke, what's the difference between quasi-memories and genuine memories? We don't want an answer that's just in terms of, well, in the case of genuine memories, you can remember back to experiences, and in the case of quasi-memories, you can't, because then the question is, well, why one and not the other? What's the difference? I think Locke is going to have to say something like the following. There needs to be a continuous life, or at least causal process, that goes from the earlier person stage and the creation of memories to the later person stage. If there isn't a continuous causal process, then it's not clear how we can have memories occurring at all, as opposed to just seeming or apparent memories. So that suggests that in order to understand Locke's position, we've got to make some reference to a causal process, and that causal process would seem to have to be one that involves changes in matter, either in the form of memories formed in the central nervous system, or if you think that it's possible to have a mind in spite of not having a central nervous system, a possibility that we considered in our discussion of the philosophy of mind, you might say, no, it's not that, but rather it's something more like perhaps you have to have memories created in a set of silicone chips, but they've got to be physically realized somewhere and persist in a continuous way over time for me to count as having genuine memories and not just quasi-memories. Now, if Locke's going to say that, then notice that it'll be less easy for him and his view of personal identity over time to look like it goes hand in hand with dualism. You might think it goes hand in hand with dualism because it suggests, at least on first reading, that Locke's theory allows just ideas to make my person stages connected into one and the same person over time. But that's not so clear once we think about the difference between quasi and genuine memories. To be genuine memories, there has to be a continuous causal process. That causal process must be a physical process. And so being the same person over time seems to require some kind of physical continuity.